right. Oh, guys, we're getting fancy. I love we have intro music now. I love it. Good morning. Thank you all for rising early with us this morning. I'm super excited about our conversation. As we know, that May is Maternal Mental Health Month. And so we're doing a couple of conversations this week, but I really am excited about our conversation today. We have with us Stacey Lookout, who is a licensed professional counselor, and she works with the Osage Nation. And we're going to be talking about weaving stories of healing, and we're going to be talking about perinatal mental health care in Indigenous communities. So I did a little brief intro, Stacey. You want to tell the people where you live, who you are, the population you work with, what you do? You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, thank you. Again, my name is Stacey Lookout. I work on the Osage Nation tribal reservation up in kind of northern Oklahoma, Osage County, kind of by the Kansas border. I am an Osage Nation citizen, and I work there. I've lived there, and very involved with my culture. Our population, we're very rural. We have a lot of poverty, transportation issues. We are growing, and Osage Nation, our executive, like our chief's office, and they really try to provide as much as they can for our citizens. They're at our home place, and we just over the last 6 years, we have really been able to offer a lot more to our constituents, especially in the world of mental health and substance use and family violence prevention. So we're pretty proud of that.
That is amazing. So you're the director of the counseling center there. But we also see that you have the perinatal mental health certification. So what drew you into this area of mental health care, perinatal mental health?
That is actually a pretty interesting story. It was driven by my own experience.
Mm.
And through learning and involving myself in just research, I found out that I wasn't the only one, because for whatever reason, it's not talked about enough. The different how perinatal mental health can present in very, very different ways. For me, it was crippling anxiety and OCD. I thought I was going insane.
Mm.
For my sister, it was debilitating depression. Couldn't get out of bed. So it was very different. And then through these conversations, like opening those doors and creating a safe space, I found out that my mom wasn't just stressed. She was able to make that connection as well, that she had postpartum depression. I mean, we all thought she was just stressed. And that's what the doctors told her. She was never diagnosed. But looking back, and although she can't remember the exact instances necessarily, but she remembers how that felt. And so I feel like that was healing for her as well. And especially in our area, it's not talked about enough, much like other mental health conditions. Also like substance use issues, like it's out of sight, out of mind. But after the birth of my first daughter, I felt like I was immune to postpartum mental health issues. I was relatively healthy mentally from what I thought. I'm a therapist. I don't know why I thought I was immune, but I started having crippling anxiety feelings, and it did start before the birth of my oldest daughter. I was an older mother. I was 31, so I'm like, okay, I'm out of what I considered the danger zone, but that was just my own ignorance speaking. And then the crippling anxiety and the OCD that I had never had before. And these things rocked my world. And whenever I went to other people to ask about it in my community, like, I felt insane, but they were like, oh, you have a beautiful, healthy baby. What do you have to worry about?
Right.
Everything's fine. You need to be grateful for that.
Isn't that always the response though? Like people kind of minimize
Oh,
these,
yeah.
which makes you as a new parent question whether or not, like, maybe this is just part of it. Maybe this happens to everybody. This is just
Yeah.
part of being a new parent, because it's a combination of your body going through this major change, and then your schedule is interrupted, and so you're thinking, oh, this is just part of it. Maybe I'm just not getting enough sleep, or something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you say now your sister, and in retrospect, your mom,
Yes.
all kind of lived through some postpartum mood disorder.
Mhm.
So you said you kind of like were talking to people saying, I'm not feeling quite like myself, and people were kind of focusing on the joy of having a baby. So how
Mhm.
did you find help? What led you to say, did somebody point it out for you? Like, no, this sounds like something else. So how did you come to know that you had a perinatal mood disorder?
I didn't at first. I just kind of limped through that, and 18 months later found out I was pregnant again.
Oh,
And I mean the symptoms subsided. They never really quite went away, but they did subside. And so then baby number two, and it was not near as bad. So I thought maybe that was an isolated event. Um, it wasn't as bad at first, I should say that. And
mhm,
then it started with the anxiety again. And then by baby number three, I knew something was wrong. Like I was able to track symptoms and I knew something was definitely wrong. And I started a PhD program
mhm.
right before I found out we were pregnant with baby number three. And I was like, that's excellent timing. Surprise, surprise. So I really started digging and researching and doing what I could do, and I was more prepared by baby number three. And I'm like, maybe this is postpartum anxiety. Maybe this is postpartum OCD. And so really dug into the research, and it actually that led me to, well, this is going to be my dissertation topic,
Wow.
because in my community, you don't hear anything about postpartum mood and anxiety disorder. If you
Mhm.
said that to anybody in my community, they'd be like, well, what's that? And so I'm like, we've got to get this research out there, because all the research I was looking at were Caucasian women. They were a lot were from different areas than where we are, and there
Mhm.
was very few with the Indigenous population. And I'm like, so we're underrepresented here. That would
Right.
explain why we don't know a whole lot about how it affects our community. But everything I was reading, it pointed towards Indigenous mothers or people giving birth were 2 to 3 times more susceptible to postpartum mood and anxiety disorders. And I'm like, whoa. So here we are at a higher rate of experiencing this, but the lowest in being represented in research. So I'm
Mm.
like, oh, we got to change that.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Right. So similarly, right? I'm in the PhD program, and that's part of my focus is on women of color, and for me, the intersection of faith and mental health is a what I'm going to be looking at. But right, a lot of the studies that were done, even with a lot of the women of color that I've seen, are not in the context of the Americas or the United States. There's like a lot
Yeah.
of studies in the UK, and like
Mhm.
I've seen some in Australia and
A
other.
lot in Australia.
Yeah. Um, so that's amazing. So are you still pursuing the PhD? Are you?
I am. I am.
That's amazing. That is
It's been
amazing, because it's so important, right? Because what people don't realize, a lot of people don't realize, is that right practice is informed by like the literature, right? It's informed by the research. New standards are developed, and assessment models and stuff are all informed by the research. So such important work. Um, so what is it that you feel, you said that this is not even a topic that people really know about in your community. Uh, why do you think that is? Is it the research is one thing, but why do you think that there's some other are there other cultural reasons why even this is not talked about, or why do you think that is that people don't know about PMADs in your community?
I'm not really sure. I'm the one that introduced my OB doctor to the Edinburgh.
Mm,
And I really, I'm not telling you as a provider what to do, but I highly suggest that you give these to your patients and check in with them, because another barrier I see is when a baby is born, everybody focuses on the baby, and the mom is here like, oh, hey, well, just a week ago, everybody was focused on my needs and making sure I was taken care of. And here I am going through it, and everybody's focusing on the baby. And I mean,
yes.
really wrapping up the mom and baby duo is key. But in my community, I'm not really sure. We are behind the times on so many things at times, and then we're really progressive in other areas. But again, just mental health in general isn't really talked about. And I do think culturally we're brought up, don't talk about your problems. And certainly don't talk about your problems to an outside person. And I mean, historically, that hasn't worked out well for us,
Mhm.
becoming vulnerable to outsiders. And that's the only thing I can really attribute it to, and just lack of knowledge. People suffer in silence.
Yeah.
And it's sad. We've got to change that.
Yeah, I think that's good culturally. That I mean, because I think a lot of communities of color, there's a similar kind of thing, right? Like we don't talk about what happens inside the house. We don't talk about that outside the house, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I know for a lot of parents of color, talking about the struggles that you might have with your own, like not feeling yourself, if you have thoughts of like harming yourself or your baby soon after, the baby is born, reporting that to somebody in authority like a doctor or some like a therapist is not somebody you'd ever think that you probably go and talk to, right?
Mhm.
But even saying it to them or a social worker in the hospital or one of the nurses in the hospital while you're still there inpatient after you delivering, it's just kind of like, but they're going to take like something, there'll be some adverse action against me.
Yeah, they're gonna take your baby away. I mean, that's the first thing you would think about. And for a new parent, that's the biggest fear, is having your baby taken away.
Right. So you think it's a lack of just kind of the information. It's cultural with, kind of this is how we deal with our problems. We deal with our problems ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, Talk to me about what kind of cultural expectations are of Indigenous women in your community. What is the expectation? What is it? What is typical womanhood and typical motherhood look like?
Um, and I can't speak for other tribal nations, but within our community, the woman she does a lot of the cooking. We follow a more patriarchal type society within Osage Nation. Like our big Inlonshka dance is the dance of the first son. And so there's a lot of emphasis put on males, especially the oldest male in the family.
Mm,
Um, but the females they have the most important space in the home, and they're the ones that take care of the home, take care of the children, take care of the family.
mhm.
And I mean, no matter what they say, at the end of the day, the mom of the house is the one that says what happens. And it's just it's different from, I would say, the more modern communities where, I mean, women are rising up left and right. And I would consider myself I like to go rogue sometimes because I'm a very, very strong, dominant female. I'm the oldest daughter, and that's kind of what oldest daughters are known for. They're known for their strength. And at the end of the day, they're next in charge. So,
Of running the household,
mhm,
right? Um, I asked that because I was wondering if they're part of like why people don't talk about things is because there's this expectation that you're supposed to hold it all together.
mhm,
So if the mom, or the woman of the house kind of falls apart or admits that I'm having some struggles here, like, or admits that I don't feel like myself, and like you said, your mom thought she was just stressed. To think of it as something other than that, it might be seen as like if I fall apart, the family falls apart.
absolutely. Absolutely. That
Yeah.
expectation is very high. And I even see that with, we have a residential treatment center for substance use and mental health. It's a co occurring 60-day treatment facility for men and another one for women. And we constantly hear that. I am the one keeping the house together. I can't go to treatment. Who's
Mhm.
going to take care of my children if I go to treatment? And so that's been just historically a barrier and a challenge just to help women get the help that they deserve.
Yeah, yeah. What are some of the other kind of barriers or challenges or unique things about um, perinatal mental health care in your context?
Well, I think that there is a lot of barriers just based in the location, because again, we are so rural. Transportation is an issue for many people. Um, and the access to healthcare in our community, although it's better than a lot,
Mhm.
there is no like OBGYN, there's no maternal anything. Like you can't go get a female exam. It's very basic, I
Mhm.
guess. And so just the access and knowing that it's available and then destigmatizing trying to get help, and it's not looked at as being weak to go get help, or you're not admitting that you're not a good mother. um, I think that's another thing that um, it's a big suck it up and move on kind of situation.
Mhm.
Like everybody goes through that. Suck it up and move on. You've got babies to take care of.
Mhm.
And just putting moms last on the list, it never works out well at all. And I mean, everybody's blown away whenever they come um, in for counseling or they come into residential treatment. And I'm like, right now, you have to put yourself first. You have to, because you're not going to be what your family needs you to be
Mhm.
if you are crumbling inside, if you don't have the tools and the skills that you need to be successful, and to take charge of your mental health and to take charge of your situation. When you don't have the tools in your tool belt, you can't do that, and that's okay. Like that's why you come for help. And
Mhm.
we've really worked, especially within the last 2 years, to destigmatize asking for help. And our slogan for Osage Nation Counseling Center is no wrong door, because there
Mhm.
is no wrong way to get help. And I do think that the only benefit that the pandemic brought to us is the expansion of telehealth services. So
Good. Yeah.
there is no more, oh, I can't come in for counseling because I don't have transportation, or I don't have gas money,
Mhm.
or I don't have anyone to watch my children while I go. We have that added benefit of being able to reach them, really reach them where they are. And that's been instrumental in breaking down some of the barriers that we've seen.
That's great. I was going to ask you, just for people who might be watching and are not familiar, right? To break kind of out of what we might stereotypically have in our minds as when we say Osage Nation. Um, do most of the members of the nation live in one community? Do they live on like what people would call a reservation? Are people all scattered all over? Do you have common points of gathering? Like how are people situated? How do they live as an Osage Nation?
We do have a reservation. It's actually the largest county in Oklahoma, Osage County. It's not exclusive to Osage Nation constituents only. So our community is very diverse.
Okay.
And I do think that's a good thing. Um, just having that diversity within our community just brings so much richness to the area. We do have, I would say, maybe concentrated collections of Osages that stay on the reservation and they live there in our home place. We do have several groups in Texas and we have some in California, and those are really like the main spots where they've gathered just over the years. They've migrated here or there and set up families, and so we especially our chief's office stays in constant contact. They call them the California Osages, the Texas Osages, and I know for a fact that he goes out there quite a bit and makes contact so that they do feel connected.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of our like language services and cultural services are all now over the computer, through Zoom or through YouTube, trying to keep everybody connected, because as a nation and as a people, like all Indigenous are, we're very proud. We're
Mm-hmm.
very centered around family and ceremony and tradition, and just keeping those things alive, keeping alive our language, keeping alive our cultural ways.
Mm-hmm.
And we have our Native American church, and we have our sweat lodge, and all of those things kind of contribute to who we are now.
Okay. What So when you talk about destigmatizing and kind of getting the word out, um, what is it? How do you do that? How have you been doing that? The slogan is great. I love that slogan, "No wrong door" for the counseling center. But are there other? How are you getting the word out to folks about it's okay to come in and talk through things and you're not alone? How do you do that?
We are everywhere. You cannot turn your head in Osage County and not see us. We are out in the community. We have a team of therapists and case managers that kind of go out into the community. They're in the schools,
Mm-hmm.
they're in the churches, they're in the community buildings. We have walks. We have walks for sobriety, trying to, and we walk through places within the community that are known for their saturation of poverty and substance use, and we're walking right through there. Like, you're gonna see us, you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna see that we're here to help you. And we have other community events. We just had a beading class the last 2 weeks. We invited anybody and everybody to come and learn how to bead and have a conversation about mental health, have a conversation about sobriety, and becoming a sober community, and a community that welcomes anybody who needs help with mental health.
Okay. So, do you provide services also for people who are not of Osage heritage?
Yes, and that is another unique thing that we worked really, really hard to do, and had to overcome our own internal challenges with
Mm-hmm.
that as well. We help anybody and everybody. Anybody that comes to our door asking for help, we are going to make sure that they get the help. And it does not matter the ethnicity, it does not matter the location within Oklahoma. We've had people call from other states too, and our case managers are on that. Like, we're going to find you help within your state, but again, no wrong door and no wrong person.
I
So
love
I know a lot of Native communities, they are bound by different things to only be able to serve either their tribal constituents or another tribal constituent from another nation, and that's it. No other ethnicity, um, bound by grants or just Indian Health Services. But the way I pitched it to we have an Osage Nation Congress, and they act as an advisory board.
it. Hmm.
They're the ones, along with our chief, that makes the decisions for what we do and how we do it. The way I advocated was, if you only help Osage constituents, you're just hitting the tip of the iceberg. These Osage constituents, they're married to people of Hispanic background. They're married to Caucasian people. They
Hmm.
have mixed children of all different races, and we need to heal the community. And in doing so, we're lifting up Osage Nation as well. I mean, you can't help people and then put them back into a sick community. So
Yeah,
we really try to, again, everybody that comes through our door, we're going to try to help them.
I love that. You can't help people and then put them back into a sick community.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a communal aspect to the work you're doing. And Mimi says that, that she agrees that communities of color in general, talking about perinatal mental health is not something that, we do. It doesn't get covered in the media. Um, Families are not made aware of these services. So I think your presence, there in the part of Oklahoma where you are, and like even walking through the communities, like you said, you're not going to turn your head and not know that we're here, right?
Mm-hmm.
You also talked about kind of like the traditions of your community, and how do you incorporate any of those traditions, be it spirituality or ritual or any of those things in working with families around perinatal mental health care?
I do. Even if they've been displaced from culture, if they didn't grow up in the community, but they still are an Osage constituent or any other nation, I try to lead them back to culture is strength, because for us, our culture is strength.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people come in and they're missing that component already. So trying to find a way for them to connect with culture, I think it solves many problems. I think it provides fellowship, it
Mm-hmm.
provides community, and it provides spirituality. So you're getting those cups filled simultaneously just from connecting with culture. And I'm a huge advocate for Native American church. I've seen amazing things come out of going in there and praying, and it's been instrumental in my own life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I encourage anybody who does have a connection to Native American church to just try it out. Go
Yeah,
there and see how that feels. And if that doesn't work for you, try something else. See how that feels and find something to connect with.
yeah. I find one of the things, when I'm thinking about my own faith tradition, one of the things that is a challenge sometimes with people in mental health is that they want to substitute one for the other, either the tradition and the culture, um, in church culture and faith, like that's the thing that's gonna make me feel better,
Mhm.
and I don't need therapy. Or people will be like, well, if I'm going to therapy, I don't need. So it's not really an either or, right? You can be in therapy and engage some of these other practices.
Absolutely. And I know that we all at the counseling center, we preach the dimensions of wellness,
Mm,
and thinking of it as getting your cups filled. Sometimes you come in and you have a really full cup of um, community and fellowship, and or you have emotional wellness, but you're lacking in your spirituality or your physical health, like you have to bring homeostasis in there and fill all of those cups.
Yeah. I love that. The focus on holistic well-being,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Because we don't realize that we are the mind body like spirit connection is really strong, right? And one um when one cup is not as full, then it starts to drain energy or whatever from those other cups, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you can't pull from an empty cup no matter how hard you try. And then
Yeah.
that's when you're going to start having some emotional disarray, or
Hmm.
you can start experiencing illnesses. And I mean, trying to really listen and lean into your body. And that's what my PhD program is, in mind body medicine and integrated mental health.
I
So
love
it all connects together, and not forgetting that. And I noticed in my own journey, and just in speaking with other mothers, there's a dissociation that happens sometimes whenever a woman goes from being a woman just by herself,
it. Hmm.
and then she is carrying a baby. So you're still you, even though you have this person inside of you, but you're still you, you're in control of that. And then you become two. And it's kind of a really weird disconnect sometimes, to connect back to this body that you may not recognize. And
Right.
I've seen that be a source of great frustration and sadness and grief, like grieving the loss of, the way things used to be, especially people that have had a traumatic birth experience.
Yeah.
They've had reconstruction done, or they had an emergency C-section, and
Mhm.
they were cut, and now they're having to reconnect with this body that they don't recognize. And
Yeah.
that can lead to a lot of depressive symptoms, a lot of anxiety, and grief and loss.
Yeah, right. And those things, so for people to kind of know that, that it's okay,
Mhm.
right, for you to experience those things. Like that doesn't make you abnormal, right? For you
Mhm.
to experience those kinds of that kind of grief, or that kind of trying to find your way back, because things are different now. There's
Mhm.
a shift that's taken place, right? Um, That's great. And Mimi wants to know, do you have a medication, medicinal component to your treatment model?
We don't yet. We do have a psychiatrist, but he is not versed in treating pregnant women or postpartum women, people who are nursing.
Mhm.
He does not have that experience. So we're trying right now to recruit a nurse practitioner, a psych nurse practitioner that has experience in treating pregnant women, postpartum women, lactating women. And we are going to try to partner with her so that we will have a medication component, because I think that's another huge stigma and misinformation, that you cannot take medication for your mental health while you're pregnant or nursing. And I think that's dangerous.
Mhm.
And I even thought that myself. I'm like, I can't take any medication because I'm lactating. But again, through my researching for different papers and assignments in my PhD, I came across PSI, and
Mhm.
that just opened my world. I was like, oh my gosh, there's a whole community of
Mhm.
people who love learning about perinatal mental health. And I was just shocked, and I was able to get into the course to become certified in perinatal mental health. Just, it was like perfect, boom boom boom, and I'm like, yes, this is meant to be. And during that course we learned about all different kinds of medications that are safe or safer, and just different conversations to have with your doctor on, what if we could try this or this, and really trying to advocate for yourself and advocate for others as you can.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of physicians in um, that particular class, so I was really happy to see that. Like, I do think the dynamic is shifting more towards understanding. And again, whenever you treat the mental health, like you're protecting that parent and you're protecting the unborn baby as well.
Yeah. See, you talked about the self-advocacy. How do you help the folks that you work with to do that, or even the communities that you come in contact with? Everybody might not want to come to one-on-one counseling, but if you're doing things in the community, how do you help? Like, what would you say to if there was a mom watching that felt like some of what you're saying feels familiar to them right now? How do you help for folks to advocate for themselves in their healthcare settings, if, with regard to their mental health?
I believe knowledge is power,
Mhm,
and researching for yourself and knowing your body and what you need. And I mean, if you find a physician that you're not connecting with, that isn't really getting it, find somebody else and keep
mhm,
researching till you find somebody that specializes in your needs. Because at the end of the day, I believe that we have an innate wisdom within us. We
mhm,
know what we need. We
mhm,
just have to lean into that and trust our intuition and speak up when something doesn't feel right,
mhm,
and just gain that information. And again, fellowship and find your community of
mhm,
people who may be going through the same things, and
mhm,
lean on each other, especially during a vulnerable time when you're feeling the sting of that vulnerability, being able to find your strength in community, and um, then just get all the knowledge you can, and feel confident enough to speak on it.
yeah. Yeah, you certainly are an example of that, and you did that for yourself. Had to keep digging and figuring out for yourself. This sounds like. This is what this is for me. And to be able to sometimes to be able to I think sometimes also that people, as people of color, communities that have been marginalized and stigmatized, in and of themselves, it's hard for us to accept that there might be a diagnosis. Like, it's almost like putting a name to something becomes a way of further stigmatizing and marginalizing us. And so we don't want to do that. But
Mhm.
sometimes there's relief, like in knowing that this thing that I'm going through is not just like a figment of my imagination. Like, this is an actual thing that people have studied and have studied how to treat, like that it can help me, right?
Yes, and a diagnosis does not have to be an identity.
Thank
And
you.
I preach that from the top of the hills. And whenever I have somebody come in for therapy, and I'm leaning in my mind, I'm leaning towards one diagnosis or another, and they say, well, what's wrong with me, what's wrong with me? And there's nothing wrong with you. You're experiencing something, and do you want to know what I think you're experiencing? Do you
Mm,
want to give it a name, or do you think that would give it too much power? And then sometimes they say, absolutely, tell me so that I know what to blame these feelings on. Or they say, no, I don't. I'll
mm,
just work through the feelings and then we'll move forward from there. So definitely, it's just it's just something that you're experiencing. It's not a part of your identity. It is not. You
mm.
don't introduce yourself as, hi, I'm Stacey Lookout, anxiety.
Right,
No,
right.
I
I love
experience
that.
anxiety.
I love that, Stacey. Oh my God, that's such a good and as a person who's a budding therapist, because I'm doing the clinical piece of one of my program now. Like, that's something that we talk about a lot, and like, especially for the communities that I'm passionate about working with. Like, you don't want people to be feel isolated or estranged, or feel like, like, I don't want to come back because the doctor gave me this diagnosis, which there's stigma still attached to them. So that's like, what a wonderful way to, like, a good reframe. I love that.
Yeah, I tell people that whenever you walk into a party or a crowded room, there's not a banner above your head that says borderline personality disorder or
Right.
depression or
Right.
PTSD. Nobody's going to know unless you tell them. But yeah, it's not a part of your identity.
I love that. What is okay? So we're gonna I've just been so thankful for your time this morning, for your sharing your own story, for talking about your work. As we wrap up, what is the one thing that one thing you want people who are not of your community to know about perinatal mental health in your community, and one thing that you want people who are part of your community to know about perinatal mental health?
I want I want conversations like this to be had everywhere. I want experiences to be shared, the good, the bad, the ugly. Um, I do feel like having conversations like this does take the stigma away, and it also takes the power that mental health issues have over people.
Mm-hmm.
You are still the one in control, and get the knowledge, ask for help. Don't be ashamed of that, and just remember that you will be a much better parent when you take care of yourself first.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you had to tell yourself that too as you were going through your journey?
Oh yeah, I was so afraid to admit what was going on inside. Never mind, my husband saw me getting up and checking doorknobs and making sure there were no blankets over the baby's face, even though intuitively I knew
Mm-hmm.
there was no blanket there. And I was lucky. He was very compassionate
Mm-hmm.
with and tried to help as best he could. And I know that there are people that don't have partners like that. So I urge partners, companions of people that are experiencing some of these things to get educated as well, so you can better support your companion and be a team. And even if there is no companion in the picture, the family, friends of somebody experiencing, even if you just think somebody is experiencing these things around you, you get the education, you do the research so that you can better support them as well.
I love it. I love it, Stacey. Thank you so, so much for being with us today. Thank you for sharing. Thanks for your advice. And for those of you watching, thank you. You'll see the numbers for three very important points of help, like immediate help. If you need some immediate help, you need somebody to talk to, you can call the PSI helpline, the Postpartum Support International Helpline. We have people who can talk with you in English or Spanish. The maternal mental health hotline, the number is scrolling. And you have certified counselors that are 24/7. And then, most of all, if you're in crisis and you're feeling like you don't know if you want to be here anymore and the struggle has gotten just that difficult, just pick up the phone and dial 988, and there are crisis counselors waiting to talk to you anywhere in the country anytime. Okay, so you are not alone. Your healing is possible, and it starts with help. So please um, access one of those numbers if you feel like you need it, or if there, as Stacey said, if you feel like there's somebody in your life who might need that point of contact, please share the numbers with them, right? And also, if you're a provider, especially if you're a provider of color, please visit us at postpartum.net and go down to the Join Us tab, and you'll find the Perinatal Mental Health Alliance for People of Color. We have trainings coming up. Stacey did our training and went through the certification process, because I agree we need more communities of color, more people of color to enter into this field, to destigmatize, to help us liberate our voices and tell our stories so that we can continue to get healed. Stacey, how can people get in contact with you if they wanted to do that?
The phone number to my office is 918-287-5413. And again, Osage Nation website, there is a whole section for the counseling center. And my email address is on there as well. It's just osagenation.gov. It's a very long email address. Yes, if anybody is interested in any of the programs that we offer or the other services that we have through Osage Nation, all the information can be found there, osagenation.gov.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Stacey.
Thank
And
you.
thank you all for joining us today, for coloring the conversation, and for kicking off our series we'll be doing for Maternal Mental Health Month. We'll be celebrating AAPI Heritage later this month with another conversation with some wonderful folks. So be on the lookout. Follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook, and be on the lookout for more information. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stacey.